Hello and welcome to the Following Truth live teach. I'm LJ, your host. The subject of this lesson today will be on who is the angel of the Lord. Now remember, if you're new to this channel, please press subscribe. Okay, so let's get straight into the teach. I'm probably going to need at least 2 videos for this subject. It's quite a long and in-depth study, so there's going to be probably 2, maybe even 3 videos, depending on what we get through in this lesson. So I'd just like to start off with saying, as a Unitarian, my beliefs in who the angel of the Lord is. So as a Unitarian, it's my belief that the angel of the Lord is exactly that. It's an angel of the Lord. It's an angel of Yahweh. It's a representative, a messenger of Yahweh. Now, the relationship between the angel of the Lord and Yahweh is explained in Exodus 23, verses 20 through 23. And we'll start off with verse 20. And that is Exodus 23:20. Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. So the text state that the angel was sent by Yahweh to go before the Israelites to take them into the promised land. So the text clearly states, I, Yahweh, will send an angel before you. Now, send is the Hebrew word shaliach, which is where we get the term shaliach from. There simply is nothing here that would require any further relationship than the angel being sent by Yahweh as his messenger. Yahweh then stated that that they should obey his voice, the voice of the angel. Exodus 23:21. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Now, this is quite an important verse. And it's actually this verse, really, that most Trinitarians or people who believe that the angel of the Lord is actually Yahweh, this is the verse that they will go to as almost concrete proof that the angel of the Lord is Yahweh. But the understanding is incorrect, of the Trinitarian understanding is incorrect. So we'll go through the verse. Yahweh's name being in the angel actually refers to authority. The authority of Yahweh was in the angel. Therefore, to disobey the angel of the Lord was to disobey Yahweh, as the angel of the Lord had the authority of Yahweh given by Yahweh. Therefore, their transgressions would not be pardoned, seeing that the angel's commands were Yahweh's commands. So anybody that disobeyed the angel would be disobeying Yahweh. Now, the Targum Onkelos recorded that in Yahweh's name were the words of the angel. So if we go and have a look at the Targum Onkelos on Exodus 23:21, it states, take heed before him and hearken to his words. Rebel not against him, for he will not forgive your sins, for in my name are his words. Now, the word pardon, that the Hebrew word translated as pardon, is nasa, and it means to lift off or to take away. And transgressions is the Hebrew word pasha. So this actually means that the angel would not carry away their transgressions. They would be required to carry them themselves. So rather than this meaning forgive sins, what it means is that the sins of the people would actually be imputed upon the Israelites, and they would have to carry those sins by through disobeying the angel that spoke the words of Yahweh. In verse 22, it says, Yahweh connects the voice of the angel to his own words. Exodus 23:22. But if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy unto thine enemies and an adversary unto thine adversaries. Now, the Targum Jonathan records it as exactly that he spoke by the angel. And we have a look at the Targum Jonathan on Exodus 23:22. For if thou will indeed hearken to his word and do all that I speak by him, I will be an enemy of thy enemy and will trouble them who trouble thee. The angel of the Lord is his physical representation. He is the presence, the very presence of Yahweh. Now, this doesn't make him God. It just means that through the angel, this is how God is seen and how God is goes with his people. And if we have a look at Isaiah 63:7, now the presence in the Hebrew, so Isaiah 63:7 states that the angel is the face of, or the presence of Yahweh. And presence is the Hebrew word panim. And panim means face. The angel is the face of Yahweh. Yahweh's face, though, cannot literally be seen. Exodus 33:17 through. And the Lord said unto Moses, I will do this thing also that thou hast spoken, for thou hast found grace in my sight, and I know thee by name. And he said, I beseech thee, show me thy glory. So Abraham asks to see Yahweh's glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee, and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show mercy on whom I will show mercy. And he said, Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live. So Yahweh tells Moses that no man can see God. Nobody can see Yahweh. So Yahweh's face cannot be seen. So he has to send representatives, an angel, in order for his face to be seen. We see the face of Yahweh through the angel. And the Lord said, Behold, there is a place by me, and thou shalt stand upon a rock. And it shall come to pass, while my glory passeth by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and I will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I will take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen. So face, again, it's the literal presence of God. Nobody can see the literal presence of God, so they have to see the back parts. And this is actually the representation. What this is explaining in metaphorical language is that we can't see Yahweh, so we have to see a representation of Yahweh. Now, interestingly, the Targum Jonathan explains this as meaning God's angels passed by Moses. And if we look at the Targum there, and it says, I will make the host of angels who stand and minister before me to pass by, and thou shalt see the hand border of the tefillah of my glorious Shekinah, but the face of the glory of my Shekinah thou canst not be able to see. This is also the meaning recorded in the Jerusalem Fragment Targum. And I will cause the host of angels who stand and minister before me to pass by, and will make known the oracle. For the glory of my Shekinah thou art not able to behold. So it's clearly explained that we cannot see Yahweh. We have to see a representation of Yahweh. The representation is the angel that he sent. The angel is a malach. It's a malach Yahweh. Now, malach is simply the Hebrew word for messenger. It doesn't have any ontological meaning. Anybody can be a malach. Human beings are malach. It just means messenger. So we have malach in malach Yahweh is the messenger of Yahweh. The word angel is the English translation of the word malach, the Hebrew word malach, and it is translated as angel when it is a spiritual being that is not God. So this is translated as angel. When it is referring to a human, malach, then it is translated as messenger. So we have angels who are messengers, but we have a distinct difference between the human messenger and the spiritual angel. Both are malach, and both can be malach Yahweh. And in fact, if we look at Haggai 1:13, Haggai is actually referred to by malach Yahweh, the messenger of Yahweh. Now, this is also the same for the priests in Malachi 2:7. The priest is called the Malach Yahweh. Now, being called Malach Yahweh does not necessarily mean that you're an angel. Both Haggai and the priest are obviously human, but they are referred to as messengers of Yahweh, and it's translated as messenger when it is referring to a human. The angel is translated as angel when it is a spiritual being who is representing Yahweh. And the angel has to represent Yahweh because God does not have a literal face. He doesn't have a literal back. This is all anthropomorphic language. And this kind of language is used so that human beings can understand. God cannot be seen, and it states that obviously in Exodus, but he is a spirit. So it's not just that he can't be seen. He is invisible to human beings. It states this in Colossians 1:15 and 1 Timothy 1:17. So if you are invisible and incomprehensible to your creation, what you do if you want to better explain yourself to your creation, you actually use language that human beings can understand. Now, I don't know if you've watched the film Mask, not The Mask with Jim Carrey, but Mask. It's a 1980s film. It's with Cher and Eric Stoltz. It's a true story about a boy who's born with a facial disfigurement. His name is Roy Dennis. And in the film, he has a girlfriend who is blind. Now, she's been blind from birth, so she's always being blind for all her life. So in the film, he wants to explain to her colors. But how do you explain blue? How do you explain red to somebody that doesn't know what colors are? They've never seen color. So you have to explain color in a way that that person can understand. And in the film, he gives her something hot to hold. And he explains that this is red. Then he gives her something cold, and he explains this is blue. And something soft, and he says this is white. So he explains colors in a way that she can comprehend, and she says that she understands. Obviously, she doesn't know the color. It's impossible for her to see the color, but she can understand what the colors represent. And so this is what God does. He uses anthropomorphic language to explain to us, his creation, things that are incomprehensible to us. We cannot comprehend God's being, so he has to use language. God does not have eyes in order to see, but the language is there to explain to us through how we understand seeing. We see through our eyes. So there is language in the Bible that says that God sees with his eyes. The same with hearing. He hears with his ears. God doesn't have ears. So it's not literal. It's just anthropomorphic language. Now, there's also languages where he has a head, he has feet, he has arms, he has a mouth, he has a nose. This is all language that is just anthropomorphic. It's a way for human beings to able to comprehend how or what God is trying to tell us through this type of language. In Psalm 91:4, it says that God has feathers and wings. And if we take that literally, we're going to have to start arguing against why God is not a chicken. So it's just language that really we shouldn't be taking literal. Now, the angel is not the only messenger of Yahweh. There are other messengers of Yahweh. And we'll just have a look at some of the other people that represent Yahweh. So the priests of Israel were to bless in the name of the Lord. Yahweh's name was on them. We find that in numerous verses, Deuteronomy 10:8. At that time, the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister unto him, and to bless in his name unto this day. Deuteronomy 21:5. And the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near. For them the Lord thy God hath chosen to minister unto him, and to bless in the name of the Lord. And the Lord there is Yahweh. And by their word shall every controversy and every stroke be tried. And in 1 Chronicles 23:13. The sons of Amram, Aaron and Moses. And Aaron was separated, that he should sanctify the most holy things, he and his sons forever, to burn incense before the Lord, to minister unto him, and to bless in his name forever. So the priests would bless in the name of Yahweh. Now, this clearly didn't make the priests Yahweh. It just meant that they represented Yahweh and they would bless in his name, and it would be as if God was blessing. So it would be the priests who would bless, but it would be as if God was doing the blessings. Now, the Israelites understood that when the angel of the Lord spoke in the first person as Yahweh, he was speaking the words of Yahweh, being under his authority. This was already explained. This has been explained in Exodus 23. So, as it's already been explained, it doesn't need to be explained every single time that the angel speaks. This is something that it's pointless to repeat that kind of language once it's already been explained. The Israelites fully understood that the angel represented Yahweh, and this was how they saw Yahweh. When they saw the angel, when the angel spoke, this was Yahweh speaking. Now, once this explanation has been given and understood, it's unnecessary to repeat it. Now, as we saw, it said that to disobey the words of the angel was to disobey God, because the angel spoke the words of God. But we find this with human beings as well. Literally just disobeying anybody that God sends, and anybody that spoke in the name of Yahweh, spoke the words of Yahweh, it was disobeying Yahweh. And we can see this in when Saul, not the Saul of the New Testament, but King Saul back in the Old Testament, Saul said that he had sinned when he disobeyed a command of God in 1 Samuel 15:24. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Now, the command that Saul disobeyed was the command by God to destroy the Amalekites. And that's 1 Samuel 15:2. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that when Amalek did which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid waste for him in the way, when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. So Saul was given a direct command by God to carry out an order to destroy the Amalekites. The command was not given directly by God. It was given through the prophet Samuel. 1 Samuel 15:1. Samuel said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Then he states for Saul to destroy the Amalekites. So we see there that Samuel states, hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Now the Lord didn't speak to to Saul, Samuel did. So, Samuel spoke the words that God gave him to give to Saul. But Saul did not do as the Lord commanded, and he spared Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and the best of the sheep, oxen, fatlings, and lambs. And we see that in 1 Samuel 15:8. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and the fatlings, and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly. So we see that the command to destroy the Amalekites was given through Samuel, and so disobeying that command that was given through Samuel was disobeying God. The prophet Samuel, speaking to Saul the words of God, Saul ignoring that, or disobeying it, or at least not fulfilling it in the way that God had asked him to do or commanded him to do, that was disobeying that command. Now, we also must notice that it was God that had stated that he would utterly destroy Amalek. And that is all the way back in Exodus 17:14. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. So God stated that he was going to destroy Amalek. But, as we see, he sent Saul to destroy Amalek. God was going to destroy the Amalekites through an agent, through a person. That was through King Saul. Had Saul done as he was commanded to do, then God would have destroyed the Amalekites. God would have destroyed the Amalekites through the agency of Saul. But that wouldn't have meant that God didn't destroy, or otherwise we would have God stating that he was going to do something and then not actually doing so. We wouldn't have been able to attribute that to Saul purely, and not to God as well. The command to destroy the Amalekites came through God, so it was God that would have destroyed the Amalekites. It would have been Saul as well, but that's how agency works. It's the agency of doing something through somebody else, but the actual command came from God. We also must note that the angel of the Lord is not the only one that spoke in the first person on behalf of Yahweh as Yahweh. Moses actually does this quite often, and specifically in the book of Deuteronomy. So I'll give a couple of examples. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, Moses switches without introduction from speaking to the Israelites about Yahweh to speaking as Yahweh in the first person. I'll read from verse 2. And Moses called unto all Israel, and said unto them, Ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh. So he's talking about Yahweh here. And unto all his servants, and unto all his land, the great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles, yet the Lord So again, he's talking about the Lord. Yet the Lord hath not given you a heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. But now he switches. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxen old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxen old upon thy feet. Ye have not eaten bread, neither have you drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I am the Lord your God. So Moses speaks as Yahweh. He speaks, I am the Lord your God. Now, nobody thinks that Moses is Yahweh. It would be a ridiculous thing to state that Moses was a third person or a second person or part of God purely because he spoke, I am the Lord your God. He was speaking as Yahweh in this verse. Now, we even see that Moses states that they, the Israelites, would hearken unto the voice of Yahweh and observe and do all his commandments, Yahweh's commandments, which I, Moses, command you. And we find that in Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28:1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. So Moses starts speaking about God, about Yahweh, switches to the first person, and then switches back. There's no introduction. He just switches from one to another. Now, we also see that Moses was the voice of the Lord to the Israelites. Moses spoke the words of Yahweh to Israel. And again, obeying Moses's words, the words that he spoke to the Israelites, was obeying the Lord. The commandments that Moses gave were not his, but Yahweh's. But as we saw, it states that I command you. Moses said, all the commandments which I command you. But they were Yahweh's commands. Now, if we already understand that the messenger can speak as the one that is sent, and Yahweh can send messengers and they can speak on the behalf of Yahweh, then this really just this type of language is not a problem. It does become a problem if the angel of the Lord speaks in this way because he is Yahweh. Well, we know that Moses isn't Yahweh. So if the angel of the Lord speaks this way because he's Yahweh, then we do have a problem with Moses speaking that way. But we also see that Moses being referred to the voice of Yahweh when he's sent to Pharaoh. Pharaoh states, who is the Lord, Yahweh, that he should obey his voice? Exodus 5:2. And Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go. Now, Pharaoh did not hear the voice of Yahweh. Excuse me. He did not hear Yahweh speak to him. How did he hear Yahweh? He heard Yahweh through Moses. In fact, actually, he heard him through Aaron, because Aaron spoke on behalf of Moses. the line of agency actually went from God through Moses into Aaron, and it was Aaron that spoke the words to Pharaoh. And we see that, and it's even explained that the prophet, Aaron being the prophet, would speak on the behalf of Moses, who was God to Pharaoh. Exodus 4:14. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth. It's a little bit like the agency going on here. He will put words in his mouth. This is exactly what we see in the New Testament when God says that he will put the words, his words, into the prophet, who is actually Jesus, into his mouth. And I will be with thy mouth. So God is going to be with Moses' mouth. So he's going to speak. God is going to speak. Moses is then going to speak what God has told him to say, and with his mouth. So Moses is going to repeat what God has told him, and Moses is going to say what God has told Moses to tell Aaron to say. And he's going to say that to Pharaoh. And will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be, even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth. So he's going to speak. Aaron is going to speak instead of Moses. And thou shalt be to him instead of God. So God is not going to speak directly to Aaron. Moses is going to be like God to Aaron. He's going to speak the words to Aaron, and Aaron is going to then speak those words. We also see Moses is not the only one who speaks in the first person. We also see this for Isaiah. Isaiah was speaking to Ahaz, and the scriptures record in Isaiah 7:10 that Isaiah is speaking to Ahaz, but it is recorded that it is Yahweh who is speaking. Isaiah 7:10. Moreover, the Lord spake again unto Ahaz, saying, Ask thee a sign of the Lord thy God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. So these words are actually spoken by Isaiah, but they are attributed to being said by Yahweh. Now, there is a possibility, it depends on how we look at the verse, that Ahaz actually replies to Isaiah that he will not tempt Yahweh, and actually refers to, he is speaking to Isaiah, and it is very likely that he actually says, I will not tempt Yahweh, and is referring to Isaiah here when he speaks. Isaiah 7:12. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord. And this is in direct reply to the words that Isaiah had spoken to him. Jeremiah also speaks as Yahweh in the first person. Jeremiah 2:7. And I brought you into a plentiful country. This is Jeremiah speaking, and I brought you into a plentiful country to eat the fruit thereof and the goodness thereof. But when ye entered, ye defiled my land, and made mine heritage an abomination. So we see that there are human beings that spoke in the first person as Yahweh. We also, so when an angel is representing Yahweh, this has already been explained, that the angel of the Lord is the mouthpiece, is the representation of Yahweh. So they don't need the introductory "Thus saith the Lord" like most of the time. We find that the prophets or Moses or somebody, they speak the "Thus saith the Lord" with that introduction or something of similar. But there is a reason why that human beings would do that and not the angels. As we've seen, the angel. I'm going to get into whether this is in part 2. I'm going to get into maybe a little bit more into whether this is one single angel or whether there are different angels that are the angel of the Lord. But it doesn't really matter for this for now. The angel of the Lord. Let's say that it's just one angel. The representation has already been understood. The Israelites understand that representation, and so that when the angel is speaking, they know that the angel is speaking the words of Yahweh, and so the angel does not need a "Thus saith the Lord." Whereas with a human prophet, a human can speak their own words. They don't necessarily speak all the time as Yahweh. They're not always speaking the words that Yahweh has given them to say. So, to distinguish between their words and Yahweh's words, they will normally introduce the words of Yahweh with a "Thus saith the Lord" or some kind of equivalent. But as we've seen, that's not always the case. And the fact that there are times when they speak in the first person as Yahweh proves that speaking in the first person as Yahweh does not necessarily make you Yahweh. Now, there are also times when we find in Scripture when human beings they do something and this is attributed to Yahweh doing it, just as we saw back in 1 Samuel with Saul destroying the Amalekites. That was actually God that was told him to do it, and it was God destroying the Amalekites. There are other scriptures that where God's agent, his representative, or his messenger, or whatever word we want to use, the person that he is using, where the attribute of that person is, or the thing that that person is doing is attributed back to Yahweh doing it. Now we can find this, a really good example of this is found in Exodus 7:17, with Moses and Aaron. And we see that in Exodus, this was during the plagues, and at the first plague, just before the first plague is administered by Yahweh, and this was the plague of blood, where the rivers changed to blood. In Exodus 7:17, God states that he is going to smite the waters with the rod that is in his hand. Exodus 7:17. Thus saith the Lord, in this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. In this being the plague that is about to be administered. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Now, it was not Yahweh who was holding the rod. Neither did Yahweh smite the waters. We are told explicitly that it was Aaron who was holding the rod, and Aaron who smote the waters. Just 2 verses later in Exodus 7:19, and the Lord spake unto Moses. So he's speaking to Moses, and he says, "Say unto Aaron." So we see again the line. God is speaking to Moses, and Moses is speaking to Aaron, because Moses is God to Aaron, and Aaron is the prophet. Take thy rod and stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, upon their streams, upon their rivers, and upon their ponds, and upon all their pools of water, that they may become blood, and that there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. And Moses and Aaron did so, as the Lord commanded. And he lifted up the rod, and he smote the waters that were in the river, in the sight of Pharaoh, and in the sight of the servants. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. Yahweh administered the plague. He administered it through the agent, the agents, in this case, Moses and Aaron. I won't go too much into the book of Revelation right now, because I'll do that at another time with the agency that goes on in the book of Revelation. But agency is actually found in the book of Revelation. The whole book is just John and the angel. And we find that in the very first verse of Revelation 1:1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. So the line of agency or representation goes all the way to the angel who showed the revelation to John. But we can also see, we'll go back and I'll just give another example of the agency coming through Aaron and Moses. As we go to the second plague, for instance, where God says that he will smite the borders with frogs, Exodus 8:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Go unto Pharaoh and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all the borders with frogs. However, yet again, when this is enacted, it is enacted through Aaron. Exodus 8:5. And the Lord spake unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch forth thine hand with thy rod over the streams, over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And we also see the agency. Another really good one is again in Exodus, and this time it is through Moses. When Moses parts the Red Sea, it's not Moses that parts the Red Sea. Moses doesn't have the power in order to make the sea part, but it is enacted through Moses. God parts the Red Sea through his agent Moses, and we see that Exodus 14:21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. So we see that this is Moses stretching out his hand over the sea. And the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So again, this just demonstrates that while a person is acting as agent of Yahweh, the actions of that person are attributed back to Yahweh, because Yahweh is acting through the agent. Now, as I said, that the angels, the angel of the Lord, the representation that the angel of the Lord has already been explained. And we have human beings who do similar things, but not in the same way as what the angel of the Lord does. There is slightly different there. We're also told in Psalm 8:5 that human beings have been made a little bit lower than the angels. For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honor. So we see that this is one of the main reasons why human beings have that a slightly different agency than the angel of the Lord, who is specifically sent to represent Yahweh. Okay, so I think we've been going now for nearly 55 minutes, so I think that's a good point to stop the part one, and we'll continue this on in part two. I hope this study has been interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at lj@followingtruth.com, or you can go to my website, www.followingtruth.com. Remember, if you like this study, to subscribe. If you want to support my work, you can. I'll leave a link a link to my PayPal in the description. And don't forget, my books are still available on Amazon. Is God Bible? Is God Bible? Is God Moral? A Biblical Analysis, and the Holy Bible versus the Hebrew Israelites. Both available on Amazon as a physical book, or you can buy ebook. The books are $9.99 or £8.99, depending where you are, and I think it's $3.49 and £2.80 something. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you on the next study.